In homework A, problem 1, we're going to analyze monopolies. All the data down here has been copied into Excel. The table models a firm which has a monopoly on airbags. As the price it charges automobile companies rises, the quantity it sells, total cost, and total revenue change. We're going to complete this table in Excel and then copy the answers back into Cengage Now. The total fixed costs do not change as quantity sold increases. The total variable cost increases as quantity produced increases. Total cost is the sum of variable cost and total fixed cost. Total revenue is price times quantity. Marginal revenue is the increase in revenue resulting from a 1 unit increase in quantity produced. And it declines. Marginal cost is the change in cost for each additional unit produced, which rises. A profit-maximizing firm sets output such that marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And since marginal revenue 18 equals marginal cost 18 when 2 units are produced, the profit-maximizing output level is 2. So the monopolist restricts output to 2, and that drives the price up that the monopolist can charge to 23. As I said earlier, these values are all 6.7. Total revenue is price times quantity. I don't have to copy 40 because it's already in Cengage Now. Total cost is a sum of total fixed cost and total variable cost. I don't copy the 18.7 because it's already in Cengage Now. Marginal revenue is the increase in revenue when output is increased by 1 unit. Marginal cost is the increase in cost when output is increased by 1 unit. I don't copy the 32 because it's already in Cengage Now. Again, the monopolist maximizes profit when marginal revenue equals marginal cost, right there. So the monopolist sets its price at 23 and produces just 2 units, which maximizes its profit at 9.3. Profit is the difference between total revenue and total cost. In part B, we have to answer a separate question about monopolies. A firm that has monopolized the crude oil industry sells 5,189 millions of gallons at a price of $5 per gallon. lowering the price to all buyers by $1, raised the quantity demanded by 478 million gallons. We want to calculate the decrease in total revenue resulting from this price change. All these numbers here have been copied and pasted into Excel. Initially, the company produced 5,189 millions of gallons of crude oil at a price of $5 per gallon. After it lowers the price by $1, the price the monopolist gets is $4, but it produces more gasoline. So it produces 5,667, or 478 millions of gallons more. So first we have to calculate the revenue before and after. The revenue before equals that, and that's in millions of dollars. After it lowers the price by $1 per gallon, its revenue falls to $22,668 million. So the decrease is $3,277 million. In part C, we have the demand equation. This is demand because the slope is negative. Down here is demand. And then we have the supply equation because the slope here is positive, and this is supply. This axis here is P, and this axis here is quantity. We have to compute the equilibrium quantity of smartphones and the equilibrium price, consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total surplus. So I'm going to copy these equations into Excel to compute the equilibrium. First, I need to set demand equal to supply. Then I'm going to combine like terms. So I'm going to add over this quantity and I'm going to subtract over the 3.1. Then I'm going to do some factoring. I'm going to factor out the Q. Then I'm going to divide by Q's coefficient up here. And I get 803.5185185. To get the price at the equilibrium, I'm going to take this value here, the right-hand side of the demand curve, and copy it down here. I'm going to replace the Q with times and this quantity. Also, I got to change that to small dash for subtraction in Excel. Next, I want to double check to make sure that I did that right. So I'm going to grab the right-hand side of the supply equation and then replace that with times that quantity. And I should get the same number, which I do. So the equilibrium price and quantity to 2 decimal places. That's the equilibrium quantity demanded and the equilibrium price. Now the consumer surplus is the triangle here. It's this triangle. The height of the triangle is the difference between the intercept 437 and the equilibrium price. The width of the triangle is the equilibrium quantity. So the height of the triangle is the intercept of the demand curve minus the equilibrium price. The width of the triangle is the equilibrium quantity. The consumer surplus is just the area of the triangle. And remember, a triangle is height times width times 0.5. So consumer surplus is 45,194.94. The producer surplus is this triangle down here. So the height of this triangle is the equilibrium price minus the intercept of supply, 3.1. And the width of the triangle is equilibrium quantity. The height of the triangle is the equilibrium price minus the intercept of supply, 3.1. The width of the triangle is the equilibrium quantity, and then producer surplus is just the area of that triangle, which is the height times width times 0.5. Total surplus is the sum of these two. We only need them to do decimal places too, so let me delete that and that. So total surplus equals the sum of producer surplus and consumer surplus. And I can delete that part there. So total surplus is this entire triangle. Now, if the cell phone companies merge into one firm, the marginal revenue curve of the resulting monopoly has an intercept equal to demands. So demand's intercept is 437. You can see that right here. This is the marginal revenue curve. And this is the demand curve. That curve right there. The supply curve doesn't change. But you can see that marginal revenue and demand have the same intercept. The slope of marginal revenue is twice as large as demand's. So the slope of demand, a negative 0.14, means the slope of marginal revenue is 2 times 0.14, which would be 0.28. Now I got to calculate the equilibrium quantity for a monopoly. The monopolist sets marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. So I got to set this equation here equal to the supply equation. So all I'm going to do there is I'm going to just go here. Wherever I see the demand curve, I'm going to change that to marginal revenue. I'm going to replace the slope with 0.28. So wherever I see 0.14 minus 0.14, I'm going to replace that with minus 0.28. So minus 0.28. Maybe I'll make that red to have it stand out. That's marginal revenue right there. Change that to 0.28. Make it red. So down here, I just got to change the 0.14 to 0.28. So the monopoly quantity is 63.09. So at 638.09 cell phones, the marginal revenue and marginal cost are about 250, but the monopolist can charge a price up to the demand curve, which is somewhere between 300 and 400, or more precisely, $347.67. So this down here is marginal revenue or marginal cost. The price the monopolist charges is 347.67. Consumer surplus is the triangle that has a width equal to the quantity supplied, 638.09. So this is the width of the triangle. And the height of the triangle would be the price the monopolist charges subtracted from the intercept of the demand curve. So the height of the triangle is the intercept of the demand curve or the marginal revenue curve, less the price the monopolist charges. The width of the triangle is the quantity the monopolist produces and sells. And then the consumer surplus is the area of that triangle. The height times the width times 0.5. To 2 decimal places, it would be 0.96. Producer surplus is a trapezoid. A trapezoid that follows along the supply curve from its intercept up to the intersection of marginal revenue and marginal cost, then straight up to the demand curve, and then straight over to the price the monopolist charges. So a trapezoid, if you can imagine it, has two parallel sides. We'll call this base 1, and we'll call this base 2. Base 2's height is the price the monopolist charges minus the marginal cost or revenue. Base 1's height is the price of the monopolist and the intercept of the supply curve. So what we're going to do is we're going to average those two bases, base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2, and then multiply that by the height of the trapezoid, which is the quantity the monopolist sells or produces. And I've already done it in Excel. So base 1 again is the price the monopolist charges minus the intercept of supply. Base 2 is the difference between the price the monopolist charges and the marginal revenue or marginal cost. The height of the trapezoid is the quantity the monopolist produces and sells. The producer surplus is the average of the two bases. So to take an average, you add base 1 to base 2, and then you divide by 2 or multiply by 0.5. And then you multiply that by the height, which is the quantity the monopolist produces and sells. So the producer surplus is 138,433. Total surplus is the sum of consumer and producer surplus. And I can delete the 4,4. So the monopoly reduces output by how much? Initially, the firms produced 803.52 smartphones. When one firm monopolized the cell phone industry, the new monopoly only produced 638.09. So we need to take the difference of these two. I'll copy and paste this difference into Excel. 165.43. The price was raised from this value to this value. And I'll copy and paste that difference into Excel. So the price was raised by $23.16. Total surplus was this value. And then we got to subtract off the new value. The decrease in total surplus is called deadweight loss. Is 7,389.14. The demand curve faced by a monopolist is the same as the industry demand curve. The monopolist is a price searcher, and the price set by the monopolist is constrained by demand. I'm going to check my work, and I should get everything correct. And it looks like I got everything correct.